The decision to risk everything weighed heavily on Jamie. A dream, a business concept, and a life built from nothing were all on the line. Yet, the stakes seemed to pull her forward, like gravity itself. Jamie sat at her desk, the weight of this moment pressing down like an anvil. She glanced at the proposal for the third time, but the words blurred together. Was this the right move? Her hands shook slightly as she reached for the glass of water, the coolness offering little relief. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a golden light across the room. A sense of finality settled over her. "This is it," she whispered to herself, the quiet words filled with both determination and doubt. She didn't know if the gamble would pay off, but she knew it was the only choice she could make. She had to try. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was an email from a potential investor. This could be the opportunity she needed to push her business forward. Taking a deep breath, Jamie glanced out the window. Her heart pounded. This was her moment. But with it came a realization she couldn't ignore. The biggest risk of her life wasn't just about money. It was about everything she believed in. She had no backup plan. If this didn't work, there was no second chance. The next day, Jamie met with her investor Jonathan at a sleek downtown cafe. The warm aroma of coffee mingled with the buzz of the crowd, but the tension between them was palpable. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, but she kept her composure. This was it, the moment where everything she had worked for could either fall into place or come crashing down. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, studying her with those cold, calculating eyes. His tone was casual, but the underlying skepticism was unmistakable. "So, tell me again why I should put my money into this," he said, sipping his espresso. Jamie's mind raced. She had rehearsed this pitch 100 times, but now, under his gaze, the words seemed to slip from her mind. Still, she steeled herself. "Because this isn't just another product," she said, her voice firm. "This is a movement, a change in the way people experience what we offer." Jonathan raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced, but Jamie pressed on. "It's calculated risk, but the market is ready. We're tapping into something new, something big." Jonathan set down his cup slowly, the clink of porcelain sounding louder than it was. His silence weighed heavily, the decision hanging in the air like an unfinished sentence. This was the turning point. Later that evening, Jamie met with her loyal confidant, Sarah, at a nearby bar. The clinking of glasses and the hum of conversation in the background seemed miles away from the storm brewing in Jamie's mind. Sarah could see it in Jamie's eyes. Her resolve was faltering. "You didn't convince him, did you?" Sarah asked gently, her hand resting on Jamie's. "Not yet," Jamie replied, her voice tight. "He is holding back. It's like he's waiting for me to prove something. But I don't know how to make him see it." Sarah's expression softened. "You don't have to make him see it all at once. One step at a time." Jamie smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It feels like it's all or nothing." Sarah squeezed her hand, offering a reassuring smile. "It's never just about one meeting, Jamie. You're on the right track. Just keep pushing." The weight of Sarah's words sank in. Jamie wasn't ready to give up, but the realization that the road ahead was going to be far more difficult than she had imagined began to settle in. It wasn't just the pitch that was hard. It was believing in herself too. The next morning, Jamie received a call from her business partner, Eric Toll. His voice crackled over the phone, filled with urgency. "Jamie, you need to hear this." The tension in his voice was enough to make her stomach tighten. "What's going on?" she asked, her pulse quickening. "It's Jonathan," Eric said, pausing. He's not in. Not for this round." Jamie felt a lump form in her throat. This was the moment she feared, the rejection she had been dreading. "So that's it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, not exactly," Eric replied. "But he's skeptical. He doesn't see the potential. He said if you can prove the concept with real data, he might reconsider." Jamie's mind raced. It wasn't a complete no, but it might as well have been. She thanked Eric, though her thoughts were already miles ahead. Real data. She needed to prove this idea, or she risked losing everything. The weight of the future seemed heavier than ever. Jamie spent the next few days in a haze, focused on gathering the data Jonathan demanded. She had no choice but to prove her idea. Hours turned into days as she worked relentlessly, poring over market trends, creating models, and pulling together every piece of information she could find. The pressure was mounting, and with each passing hour, the fear of failure crept closer. But then, in the late hours of one night, as the numbers finally aligned, Jamie realized that the data was there. It wasn't just numbers. It was proof that the vision was possible. She couldn't wait any longer. With trembling hands, she hit send on the email to Jonathan, attaching everything he had asked for. As the email zipped away into the ether, Jamie felt a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. This was the last shot. If this didn't work, everything would be over. But for now, she could only hope. The morning after sending the data to Jonathan, Jamie waited, every second feeling like an eternity. The anticipation was unbearable. Days passed, and she heard nothing from Jonathan. She checked her email every few minutes, hoping for a response, but there was silence. Every part of her was on edge, filled with nervous energy. Was it not enough? She couldn't shake the thought that perhaps Jonathan had written her off. Yet, she held on to a sliver of hope. The phone call from Eric, earlier that week, had been a reminder that no answer wasn't the same as a no. Still, as the silence stretched on, her doubts grew. Her mind was a constant barrage of questions. What if he didn't think she could handle the pressure? What if the numbers weren't convincing enough? She had already sacrificed so much to get to this point. Her bank account was running low, and the pressure of making this work seemed to multiply with each passing day. It's only a matter of time, she told herself. But the longer Jonathan remained silent, the more Jamie's uncertainty began to eat away at her. She needed to act fast before she lost the confidence that had carried her this far. Jamie couldn't take the silence anymore. Her decision was made. She called Eric, her business partner, and told him she was going to meet Jonathan in person. The urgency in her voice was palpable. "He's not answering my emails, Eric. I need to see him face to face," she said, pacing around her small apartment. Eric hesitated on the other end. "Are you sure that's a good idea? What if he feels pressured?" Jamie paused. "I need him to understand the stakes. We're running out of time. If we don't get this right, it's over." There was a long pause. "Okay, I'll back you up, but make sure you keep calm." Jamie hung up, grabbed her jacket and rushed out the door, her mind racing. She had no idea what she was going to say to Jonathan, but she couldn't afford to lose the opportunity. She had spent too many sleepless nights building this business. It had to work. When Jamie arrived at the upscale office building where Jonathan worked, her heart raced. The sleek modern lobby was quiet, the polished marble floors reflecting the ambient light from overhead. She felt out of place, as though she were stepping into a world she wasn't yet a part of. But she didn't let that show. She took a deep breath and walked confidently to the elevator, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. She pressed the button for the top floor, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. This is it. No turning back now. The elevator doors closed, and she ascended, the silence amplifying the pounding in her chest. Jonathan had agreed to meet with her, but Jamie knew that this meeting would determine everything. As the doors opened and she stepped out, Jonathan was already waiting. His face was unreadable as he gestured for her to sit. "Let's talk," he said coolly, the tension between them hanging thick in the air. As Jamie sat across from Jonathan in his sleek, minimalist office, the tension in the room was palpable. Jonathan's eyes were locked onto hers, but his expression remained neutral, unreadable. "I've gone through the data," he said, his voice flat. "And it's interesting, but it's still a risk." Jamie clenched her fists under the table, her palms sweaty. "It's a calculated risk," she replied, trying to control the nerves creeping into her voice. Jonathan leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing. "Calculated, yes, but the market is unpredictable. You're asking for a lot of trust." The words hung in the air, heavy with doubt. "I know," Jamie said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "But trust is all I have. And if this works, it'll change everything." Jonathan paused, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. "I'll give you a chance, Jamie. But you have to prove it. Get back to me in a week with more solid proof. Real customers, real data. And then we'll talk." Jamie exhaled slowly, trying to hide her relief. She hadn't won yet, but this was a step forward. The week that followed was the most stressful of Jamie's life. Every waking moment was consumed with trying to prove the viability of her business. She reached out to customers, gathered feedback, and refined her pitch. As the days wore on, the pressure mounted. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from Eric, Sarah, and potential clients, everyone wanting to know how things were progressing. By the time the week ended, Jamie felt both exhausted and exhilarated. She had done everything she could. Her data was solid, and the feedback she had received was overwhelmingly positive. But as she prepared to meet Jonathan again, she couldn't shake the feeling that this could still go either way. She wasn't sure if she was ready for failure, but she knew she had no choice but to push forward. When she finally met Jonathan at his office, she was ready. She walked in with the updated data, her confidence restored, but the fear of rejection still lingering. Jonathan greeted her with a nod and motioned for her to sit. "Let's see what you've got," he said. This was her moment. A few weeks had passed since Jamie met with Jonathan. His response had been both a relief and a challenge. He was intrigued, but not yet sold. The pressure to prove herself intensified every day. But despite the challenges, Jamie couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. The data was now undeniable, and the market demand was growing. Still, there were moments of doubt. What if this wasn't enough? She had put everything she had into this business, and every setback, no matter how small, made her question her worth. Yet, the momentum was building. Sales had started to increase, customers were raving about the product, and even the skeptical investors were beginning to take notice. Jamie wasn't just selling a product, she was selling a vision, a future where her company could reshape an entire industry. But this wasn't the time for celebration. She needed more proof, more data, more customers. It wasn't just about Jonathan anymore. She had to prove to herself that this was real. She sat at her desk one evening, the office lit only by the soft glow of her desk lamp. The latest report lay in front of her, and as she scanned the numbers, a sense of accomplishment washed over her. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. This is just the beginning, she thought, determined to keep pushing forward. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a while, Jamie felt like she could see a path. As the weeks rolled on, Jamie began to see the fruits of her labor. Sales figures continued to rise, and new customers were coming in faster than she could manage. The growth was exciting, but with it came a new set of challenges. She found herself juggling multiple tasks at once, negotiating with suppliers, handling customer feedback, and managing the growing demands of the business. One evening, she was catching up on emails when she received an unexpected message. It was from Jonathan. The subject line read, "Impressed, but not there yet." Her heart raced as she opened the email, hoping for good news. But Jonathan's words, while encouraging, were clear. He was still waiting for Jamie to prove that the business had long-term potential. "The market's good now, but I need to see if this is sustainable," he wrote. "Prove that this can last, and we can talk next steps." Jamie's shoulders slumped. It wasn't the yes she was hoping for, but it was better than nothing. Jonathan hadn't given up on her yet. "I need to make this last," Jamie thought, staring at the screen. The weight of the responsibility felt heavier now, but she knew it was time to dig deeper and make sure her company could stand the test of time. The next morning, Jamie called Sarah, her loyal confidant, to talk through the email. "It's not a no," Jamie said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "But it's also not a yes. Jonathan needs more proof that this is a sustainable business." Sarah's voice was steady on the other end of the line. "You've got this, Jamie. You've shown growth. Now you just need to show that it's something real, something that can last." Jamie nodded, even though Sarah couldn't see her. I just feel like the pressure is mounting, and I don't know how much more I can take." The words hung in the air between them, a reflection of the doubts that Jamie hadn't been able to shake. But Sarah was right. There was no room for failure. "What's the next step?" Sarah asked. Jamie sighed, but a small spark of determination lit up inside her. "We expand. We grow faster. I'll prove that this isn't a one-time success." The resolve in her voice was clear. It was time to take it to the next level. The following days were a blur of strategy meetings, late nights, and phone calls. Jamie worked tirelessly, reaching out to more potential customers, refining the product, and analyzing every piece of feedback. She knew she needed to build something that could stand on its own. She also knew that Jonathan would be watching closely. One evening, she sat in a local cafe, working through the numbers with Eric. The steady hum of conversation around them did little to distract her. "We need to increase our outreach," Jamie said, tapping a pen against the table. "The product's great, but we need more visibility, more awareness." Eric nodded, flipping through his notebook. "I agree. Let's brainstorm some new marketing strategies. But we also need to be careful not to spread ourselves too thin. Quality over quantity." Jamie smiled, relieved to have Eric's support. The task ahead seemed daunting, but with a plan in place, she felt more prepared. The product was ready, and now it was time to let the world see it. Weeks passed, and as Jamie refined her business, she could feel the momentum building. Sales were steadily increasing, and the feedback from customers was overwhelmingly positive. One afternoon, as she sat in her office, reviewing the latest reports, she felt a sense of pride. The phone rang, and when she saw the caller ID, her heart skipped a beat. It was Jonathan. She took a deep breath and answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Hello, Jamie," Jonathan's voice came through the line. "I've been following the progress, and I'm impressed. You've done more than just grow the business. You've built something that can last. I'd like to discuss moving forward with a more formal investment." Jamie's mind raced, but she kept her voice calm. "I'm ready. Let's talk." The weight that had been bearing down on her for so long finally lifted. She had done it. She had proven to herself and to Jonathan that this was real. The future was now within reach. The morning after receiving the "yes" from Jonathan, everything seemed to shift. But just as Jamie began to breathe a little easier, she received a call from Eric that completely threw her off balance. "Jamie, you need to come in." "It's urgent," he said, his voice filled with tension. Her heart sank. She rushed to the office where Eric was already pacing back and forth. "What's going on?" Jamie asked, trying to stay calm. Eric handed her a printout, and she stared at the document in disbelief. It was a report showing that her once trusted business partner Lucas had been secretly selling company data to a competitor. "How could he?" Jamie whispered, feeling the sting of betrayal. Lucas had always been by her side, but now everything felt like it was falling apart. The betrayal cut deeper than any financial setback. Jamie stood up, anger and disappointment flooding her chest. We have to confront him now." Jamie and Eric stormed to Lucas's office. The door was open, and Lucas was sitting behind his desk, acting casual, as though nothing had changed. "We know what you've been doing," Jamie said, her voice sharp with anger. Lucas didn't even flinch. "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied coolly, his tone dismissive. Jamie slapped the printout onto his desk. "Don't lie. You've been selling our company's data to our competitors," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and fury. Lucas finally looked up, his face hardening. "It's just business, Jamie. You didn't move fast enough. I had to do what I had to do." Jamie's heart shattered. She had trusted Lucas with everything. "You've betrayed us," she said quietly. "I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done." Later that day, Jamie sat in her office, the weight of the betrayal heavy on her shoulders. She had contacted legal counsel, but the entire situation felt like a nightmare. She had built this business from the ground up, only to have it threatened by someone she considered a friend. She couldn't focus. Her thoughts were consumed by what to do next. Was Lucas just a pawn, Or was there more to the story? As she sat there, Sarah entered the room, concern written all over her face. "How are you holding up?" she asked, sitting down beside her. Jamie let out a shaky breath. "I don't know how I'm supposed to keep going," she confessed. "This feels like a nightmare. I don't know who to trust anymore." Sarah's voice softened. "You can't let this destroy you, Jamie. You've got to keep going. This is your moment." Jamie met Sarah's gaze. "You're right. I can't let this stop me. Not now." Jamie knew she couldn't let Lucas's betrayal ruin everything. She took a deep breath and began to formulate a plan. The legal battle would be long, but it was necessary. Her business was still in its infancy, but the progress they had made was undeniable. "I can't give up now," she thought, staring at her business plan. But even as she plotted her next move, doubt gnawed at her. Would Jonathan stick by her side after this? Would he still believe in her vision? She couldn't afford to lose him now. Her phone buzzed, and she quickly picked it up, relieved to see it was a message from Jonathan. "Let's meet. I want to see your next steps." She exhaled. This could be the turning point. She needed to prove that her company was worth the risk. Jamie and Jonathan sat across from each other in a small meeting room. Wine. The tension was palpable. She could feel the weight of the past few days pressing down on her. "I've been through a lot," Jamie said, her voice steady but quiet. "But I'm not backing down. I've worked too hard for this." Jonathan nodded, his expression unreadable. "I've been impressed with your resilience, Jamie. But it's not just about pushing through adversity. It's about being smarter. I want to see a strategy for the future. If you can show me that, then I'll invest." Jamie took a deep breath, knowing this was her moment. "I can do that. I'll prove to you that this business isn't just a good idea, it's the future." Jonathan leaned back in his chair, eyes locking onto hers. "Show me." Jamie threw herself into the work. She spent days refining her strategy, updating her business plan, and putting together a comprehensive proposal for Jonathan. She knew this was her shot. The future of her company depended on her ability to prove herself, not just to Jonathan, but to everyone who had doubted her. The days were long, but the energy she felt was palpable. As she worked, her confidence grew. She was finally seeing the bigger picture. This wasn't just about the product anymore. This was about building something that could change lives. But the pressure was starting to take its toll. Jamie had always been the type to push herself until she couldn't anymore, and now it was starting to show. Her sleepless nights were catching up with her. The idea of failure, of losing everything she had worked for, loomed over her like a dark cloud. Still, she pressed forward, knowing she had no other choice. After a week of sleepless nights, Jamie finally felt ready to meet with Jonathan again. The plan was clear, the numbers solid. She felt more confident than ever, knowing this could be the moment that would change everything. As she walked into Jonathan's office, the usual nervousness was replaced with a calm certainty. "I've worked hard to get here, Jonathan," she said as she sat down. "This isn't just about me anymore. It's about what this business can become." Jonathan studied her carefully, his expression still unreadable. He was a man of few words, but the way he listened spoke volumes. "I'm ready," she continued, "to take this to the next level, and I'm willing to prove it to you." Jonathan leaned forward, eyes locking onto hers. "Let's see it." As Jamie presented her proposal, she could feel Jonathan's gaze on her. The silence between them was deafening, but she pushed through, explaining every detail of her strategy. She could tell he was processing everything, weighing the risks and the rewards. Finally, when she finished, the room seemed to hold its breath. Jonathan leaned back, his hands steepled in front of him. "You've done your homework, Jamie. This is solid. But I need to know one thing. Are you in this for the long haul, or is this just another step on the ladder?" Jamie paused for a moment, searching her own heart for the right words. "I'm in this for life," she said, her voice steady. "This isn't just a business to me. It's my purpose." Jonathan studied her for a moment before nodding. "That's what I needed to hear." Jonathan's words hit Jamie like a wave. "Are you in this for the long haul?" She had never been more certain of her answer. Everything she had done, every setback, every victory, it all led her here. She had no doubt now. This was her future. She couldn't walk away, even if it meant more sacrifice, more risk. "I'm all in," Jamie said, her voice unwavering. Jonathan's face softened slightly, and for the first time in this meeting, she saw a flicker of respect. "Good," he said. "Let's make this work." With Jonathan's approval, Jamie felt like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. But there was no time to relax. The next steps were just as critical. As she left Jonathan's office, the reality of her situation hit. She had secured the investment, but now came the hard part: scaling the business, managing growth, and dealing with the inevitable obstacles. It was no longer about proving herself. It was about execution. She had what she needed, and now she was ready to take it all the way. Jamie stared at the growing pile of reports on her desk. With Jonathan's backing, the pressure had only increased. Every decision now felt like it carried weight. Yet, with each new challenge, she felt herself growing stronger. The business was expanding, and with it came new hurdles. Still, Jamie kept pushing, determined to turn her vision into something tangible. The road ahead was long, but for the first time in months, she wasn't afraid. She was ready. As the weeks passed, Jamie worked tirelessly to meet the goals set by Jonathan. Every new challenge tested her resolve. Yet, each time she thought about giving up, the vision of her company's success drove her forward. One evening, Sarah visited the office offering support. "You're doing amazing, Jamie," she said. Jamie smiled, grateful for the reminder. It was a tough journey, but with the right people beside her, she knew she could succeed. Jamie took a deep breath as she reviewed the latest projections. The numbers were promising, but they weren't enough. She needed more. Her phone rang, and it was Jonathan. "I'm impressed with your progress, Jamie. Let's talk about scaling up." His words hit her like a wave. The weight of the next step was enormous. But Jamie wasn't afraid anymore. She was ready for whatever came next. The next phase of the business felt like a new chapter. As Jamie met with investors, strategized with her team, and implemented new systems, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she'd come. The challenges she faced were still great, but now there was clarity. The future was in her hands, and she was ready to steer it. With the new investments and strategies in place, Jamie finally felt like the business was on the cusp of something extraordinary. As she sat at her desk reviewing the final details of the expansion plan, she knew that the hard work was paying off. There was still more to do, but now success didn't feel so far away. As the company grew, Jamie reflected on the road that had brought her here. She had faced countless obstacles, and yet she had come out stronger. One evening, as she watched the sunset from her office window, she felt a sense of pride. This was just the beginning, but she was already proud of how far she'd come. Jamie met with her team to discuss the future. "We've come so far," she said, her voice filled with pride. "But this is just the beginning. We need to continue pushing, continue innovating." Her team nodded in agreement. There was still much to be done, but with the foundation laid, they were ready to take on whatever came next. The company's success was undeniable, but Jamie knew there was always room for growth. As she walked into her office one morning, she received another offer, a major partnership that could take the company to new heights. The excitement was palpable. This could be the breakthrough they needed. With the new partnership in place, Jamie felt more confident than ever. The business was thriving, and her team was stronger than ever. As she stood before them, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. "We've made it this far together, and I know we'll continue to succeed," she said. The room erupted in applause. Looking back, Jamie realized that every risk, every moment of doubt had led her to this point. She had built something from nothing, and now her company was a thriving success. As she walked out of her office that day, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This wasn't just a business, it was her legacy.